Hello there once again, it's your old pal Locke the Bounty Hunter, and on today's very special episode, we are checking out one of my favorite channels, It's Complicated, with the video Men Aren't Heard. I love this guy. He does absolutely fantastic work. If you haven't supported his work, the link is in the description down below. Give him likes and subscribes, check out his stuff. He is truly doing the work of the intergalactic space god Flowbachord. All hail, and let's not waste any more time and dive right in, shall we?
Can you name some controversial women's issues?
Controversial women's issues. The wage gap, the pink tax.
Both of which have been thoroughly debunked for the last couple of decades.
Controversial women issues such as like abortion, the housing, rent, equal rights.
How is housing and rent a woman's issue? Landlords will screw you over regardless of what you're packing betwixt your legs, woman.
Things like that.
Roe versus Wade that was overturned. Women have a right to their body.
Okay, I am not a legal scholar, so me going into the nuances of Roe versus Wade is probably not the smartest of ideas. However, judging from my basic knowledge of the court case and what it actually establishes, I feel fairly comfortable in saying that these idiots who parrot these talking points have absolutely no idea what they're talking about when it comes to that particular case. And you could tell that guy is raising all sorts of simple arms.
Can you name any men's issues?
This ought to be good.
Yeah, men's issues are that men have no, I can't. Like men have quite a bit.
Does men having to deal with modern women count as a men's issue? I like to think that it does.
Men's health is really a big issue right now. It seems like we're in a time that it's hard for men to talk about their mental and physical well-being without being ridiculed or demonized.
In other words, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. Here's the problem. Society has been going on and on and on about how men need to be in touch with their feelings and need to be unafraid to express themselves, but the second men express themselves, they are immediately seen as undesirable by society in general. So if we keep our feelings in, then we're being insensitive, but if we actually let them out, then we're considered to be emotional wrecks. We can't win either way.
A lot of men don't really talk about what's going on like in their minds.
That's because it's none of your business. And if we did tell you what was going on in our minds, you would be incredibly uninterested because this subject doesn't revolve around you, sugar.
Really, and that leads to like more within men and stuff like that.
I would say like their ability to be emotionally vulnerable.
You don't want us to be emotionally vulnerable. Well, no, strike that from the record. Let me rephrase. You want simps to be emotionally vulnerable because you can exploit them. The men that you're attracted to, the ones that you want, you don't care. That you are totally fine with them and how they feel about themselves. It is the simps you want to be emotionally vulnerable because then you can manipulate them to get free food and money.
Why do women say they want men to show their emotions, yet they say they want macho, masculine men?
Because modern women don't know what they want. They like to pretend to know what they want.
I think there's a fine line between both of them. I think that we want that security, but, well, certain women want that security.
No, women want the security of a masculine man. That is biology. Judging from your demeanor and the way you talk, you probably graduated from a major university. You look like you're about $80,000 in debt, so you understanding biology, yeah, I guess it all kind of makes sense why you don't understand that concept.
But they also want them to be able to communicate and be open with them.
I think women are confused in a lot of ways because they say they want these things. Like, for instance, women say they want a nice guy, but when they get a nice guy, they leave him.
Exactly. Women do not respect those men.
Men being on child support is kind of like a big issue in the world today.
Men get child support?
When it comes to custody, when it comes to child support, which I believe is complete theft.
Sir, your demeanor is as classy as your suit. Man, I wish I could pull off that look. Amen to you, sir.
Who Who's more empathetic, men or women, and why?
I think women are more empathetic because they are the ones that has to deal with the baby 9 months, and the men are just there to be like kind of like support.
Personally, I would say women. We kind of naturally have that within us.
Woman, how can you stand there and say that women have more empathy when you are virtually disregarding the problems that face a majority of men in today's society? I'm sorry, sister. There's just no way you know what you're talking about.
Can be knocked out, but we have to care. Our body, like our biological nature, is to care.
I would say men are more empathetic because men have to understand women to navigate the relationship.
They used to have to understand them. There's nothing to understand now. It is just a massive empty vacuum of political platitudes.
Whereas women have this preconceived notion about how a relationship would be, how men are supposed to provide. So they do not give men the leeway to be at fault, have faults, make mistakes as men give women.
And that's because women expect men to fulfill their fantasy, and they don't even know what that fantasy is.
I think men are constantly told to like toughen up or be a man or like you're not allowed to cry, whereas like women aren't.
You're not told to do anything. You are encouraged to act as immature as you possibly can.
Are allotted the opportunity to be emotional, and
we don't want to be emotional. Our emotions and how we feel are none of your concern.
And so I think if we socialize boys to feel their emotions more often, then they would be more comfortable with being empathetic.
No, boys need to learn how to be masculine and how to compete. They need to be able to fight. If you're going to lead, you need to be in control of your emotions. You need to be able to make tough decisions. You don't do that by being in touch with your fifis.
Women say they want men to be more emotional. How are today's men more emotional than they've ever been, yet men are struggling more than they ever have?
Plain and simply, too many women raising men. They said, I don't need a man to help me raise my child. I can do this on my own. Then you raised a bunch of feminine-ass men, and as a result of having feminine-ass men, now you have sensitive men and insensitive women who grew up in those insensitive homes because they never got to see their mother being vulnerable. All they saw was their mother being the hard-nosed.
Right on, brother, I hear you. Man, I hear you.
I want to buy that man a sandwich. There's a reason why we call it fatherless behavior and why we are seeing it like a plague that's infecting the Western world right now. Women love to completely disregard the importance of the father in a child's upbringing. These women have convinced themselves that they don't need a man for anything, and then are shocked and appalled once their kids become felons.
Is the problem that men don't express their emotions, or is the problem that people don't listen when men do express their emotions?
People don't listen in general. When it comes to our emotions, we need to be comfortable with them ourselves. Society can go kiss my ass when it comes to my emotions. It's none of society's business.
Most of the problem is that people do not listen when men express their emotions, especially in their relationships with their partner. Women's want a sensitive and emotional, intelligent man, but yet when a man expresses his feelings and emotions, they look down upon him. And
that's because women do not respect men who are in touch with their emotions. Women want stoic, masculine men. That has never changed.
Ridicule them.
Why are we more concerned with men showing their emotions than we're concerned with what men are actually being emotional about?
That is an interesting question. I do not have an answer for that right now.
If I had to venture a guess, I would say it's because of the societal exploitation. With everything that's going on right now, you have a majority of very feminine men out there who are constantly being berated, abused, and used. So society needs a whole bunch of weak men in order for things to collapse so it can be rebuilt in an incredibly frightening image.
If men say they want to talk about men's rights, how many women are willing to hear that?
About 2%.
So then can we conclude that women don't really care about men's feelings?
If we're talking stereotypically, I would say that is correct.
I don't think that's a fair conclusion because of the power struggle that we go through.
You don't suffer from a power struggle, woman. You are given everything on a silver platter, and you still figure out new and creative ways to completely and utterly screw it up to an exponential degree that nobody saw coming. And that is saying something.
But I think that both parties could be more willing to listen. I think the frustration comes when women are trying to talk about women's issues, and then men are like, well, what about men?
Nobody cares what you think.
Oh God, you smooth-brained simpleton. That is something you do. Whenever men bring up some type of legitimate issue that is affecting men across the Western world, you turn around and say, well, what about women's issues? What about pregnancy termination? What about all sorts of other imaginary things that don't exist, but I pretend affect me because I like attention?
When they didn't even bring the conversation up.
Doesn't the opposite happen? When men talk about men's issues, women say, what about women?
Personally, I've never had a man bring it up.
Liar, liar, liar.
On his own. It only ever comes up when a woman's talking about issues she faces.
Why do men get so much resistance from other men when talking about men's rights?
There are a concerning number of men out there who will wave these incredibly absurd flags and emasculate and flog themselves for these broads who have absolutely no intention of giving them the time of day. That doesn't mean they won't use him for resources. They will totally use him for free food whenever they need a couch moved or anything like that. But these guys will wave that flag hard because they are desperate for this woman's affection.
Men have this competitive nature, this ego macho, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, don't show your expressed emotions. So men ridicules other men for being emotionally intelligent or in touch with their feelings.
But there is a flip side to that coin. When a man realizes that it's all BS and that everything is upside down, and once they realize they have been fed a huge amount of lies and they realize their own self-worth and their own self-respect, and we have this huge camaraderie of men that get together to build each other up, we know that in order to get through this, we kind of have to lock in with the sacred right of brotherhood.
They call them simps.
Why is it more socially acceptable for women to hate men than it is for men to hate women?
I don't think that is acceptable for either.
Liar, liar, liar.
Because women have always been oppressed versus men have always been on the top, so it's kind of...
Woman, you have never been oppressed a single day in your life. You like to pretend that you're oppressed because you get things, you get attention, you get preferential treatment in the office, and it also gives you this false justification for you to act like an immature brat instead of a grown-up.
Like misogynism is not as accepted as like trashing men.
Because men have the power.
I will write you a cashier's check for $5 if you can name how you are oppressed today. I will do it. I have the spare time.
Do all men have the power, or just a few men at the top of the food chain?
It doesn't matter. They still have the power struggle.
No, it does matter. It does matter, because if it's a small percentage of men, then your argument is completely null and void. More and more women are being put into positions of power. Just take a look at all of the Western nations that have female prime ministers, female presidents, and guess what they all have in common? They're all just absolutely falling apart at the seams.
Aren't the majority of homeless people men?
Probably, but again, we all suffer under the same patriarchy.
No, you don't suffer. You benefit.
We've lived in a world of a patriarchal society, so it's always better for...
Dude, you don't even look like you can define the word patriarchy. What are you talking about?
The oppressed to talk about the oppressor than the oppressor to talk about the oppressed. And since men have been the oppressor for millennium, that is basically why women can talk about men and when men cannot talk about women.
Why is it when a man follows his natural inclination to lead, he is called an oppressor? But when a woman comes in and completely destroys everything, she is called empowered and gets a million different chances.
Do women get shamed, canceled, and silenced when they say bad things about men?
Not really, not normally.
Do women get shamed, canceled, and silenced when they say bad things about men?
No. depending on who they're talking to. Are they talking to women or men?
No, they don't. Here's something interesting that I've come across. If you go to TikTok and you type in MGTOW in the search bar, it comes up as 0 because it violates their terms of service. However, on that very same platform, you actually have short-haired birthing people, I don't want to offend anybody, who ultimately call for the mass cleansing of men. It is called K All Men, and they can talk about whatever they want, and it's totally cool by TikTok standards. However, men talking about self-improvement, going to the gym, and just laughing at the absurdity, yeah, that's what's toxic.
I think it goes both ways.
Why is it when women misbehave, we blame social media, but when men misbehave, we hold them accountable?
Well, I don't think, I mean, our previous president, Trump, literally said grab a woman by the pussy, and he was able to run again for office. I don't think we hold men accountable.
Oh my God. I abhor politics. Even when I was asleep, even I know that whole incident was him just trying to act big in front of another man. It was just chest beating and trying to be masculine. God, get over yourself.
That's a crazy statement.
If we consider that the mainstream media, social media, TV, newspapers are all owned by powerful men, the real patriarchy of this world, who is giving women so much airtime and platform to challenge the patriarchy?
Preach the truth, dude. Preach the truth.
Weak motherfucking man.
I don't want to buy this man a sandwich. I want to petition the world of sandwiches to make sure that this man gets free sandwiches for life.
Weak man.
Why are women able to organize women's marches, but men can't organize men's marches?
Because women's marches are sanctioned by social media, by corporations, and by the government. If men try to do the same thing, it's going to be seen as a group of extreme men, and they are going to be assumed to be doing something awful.
That's not true. We had one in 95 called the Million Man March, and it was organized and it was successful.
1995, you say? Yeah, the last time I checked, that was almost 30 years ago. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but quite a bit has changed since then.
And it was clean, it was organized, no fights. And it was 2 million men there. So I don't believe that's true.
On YouTube, you can't say words like and how can we attempt to solve problems when we have to use terms like corn, grape, and self-delete when discussing men's issues?
Well, it's hard to fix any issue if you can't talk about it, if you can't be honest about it. Just like race or inequity, gender inequity, class inequity, if you
those are all words that you can actually say without being threatened of having your account deleted.
Cannot talk about the issue, it's hard to solve the problem, so.
How can free speech and censorship coexist?
They don't. They can't.
I don't know, everything is very monetized now. Everything is very, like, you can't, it's like freedom of speech, but not online anymore.
What does that have to do with monetization? I am a creative man, but even I can't understand that. What does one have to do with the other, you empty-headed freak?
Why do the men who fought for their freedom of speech have the least amount of it?
Because we're men and we're meant to stay silent and work.
Why don't men lobby Congress like women do?
Too busy working.
Are men less likely to lobby Congress because they're too busy working and afraid to get canceled?
I would say so, 100%.
It's also because nobody would take it seriously. If you have a bunch of men's rights activists try to lobby Congress to change divorce laws, all that's going to happen is all of those men are going to be relentlessly ridiculed, and they're going to be victims of the police state.
Men have an image of what masculinity is, and that's strong and
You have an image of masculinity as well. Women have a view of masculinity that is incredibly distorted and kind of absurd.
Unimpenetrable, like you can't, nothing can affect you, then you wouldn't want to show that side because it diminishes that image. But
yeah, you're talking about stoicism, and that is one of the key pillars of masculinity.
When actuality, in my belief, is part of your strength, because once you cut off that emotional side from you, you're cutting off a side of yourself.
I absolutely love it when modern women think they have just said something that was so philosophically deep that they seem to be impressed with themselves. What they're saying isn't even on par with poorly written fortunes from cheap fortune cookies.
Why are men forbidden to represent women's issues, but when we talk about men's issues, it's either represented by women or only the rich alpha men, never the average men?
Well, I would argue that rich men have a better shot at keeping their channels open. Outside of the fact that they do bring in ad revenue to YouTube, there's also the fact that they have lawyers that can fight back against YouTube for trying to censor them, even though we all know that is kind of a load of malarkey. But they do have a better shot than the smaller channels, which are easier to shadow ban and are just easier to suppress all the way around because we don't have the means of fighting against that machine the same way that the larger channels do.
Because the rich alpha men have platforms, for one. Two, men can talk about women's issues if they're considerate and knowledgeable about the issue. Most of the time, men don't talk about women's issues because they don't have an idea of what they're talking about.
Men know more about the issues than you do, sir.
And I think women are good advocates for everyone in their communities.
The only thing you're good at advocating for is yourself. That's all you care about at the end of the day.
Because we're used to advocating, and I think that a lot of insecure men and I think a lot of incel men, like that whole genre, is very scared to admit that they're insecure.
I don't see how you can claim to be more empathetic and be more for advocacy when you're standing there and using a blanket insult to just judge an entire group of men that you know nothing about. Calling men incel and insecure are some of the laziest things that you can possibly do, and you only insult men when you know you have nothing else to talk about.
But on the same time, you have these quote-unquote alpha males who think that want to relegate us back to an area of male superiority or a patriarchal society, I would.
All right, man, I just gotta say it. The women who are listening to you don't want to bone you. They do not want your body. They do not want to breed with you. They do not want you in their bed. They want nothing to do with you. Why are you making a fool of yourself? These chicks are laughing at you, dude. They are laughing at you while they tabulate all of the ways they can use you.
Why do women talk about equal representation, but when they get it, they go and push men out of being represented? Is that equal?
I don't think that that's true, because most areas of representation are majority men, even though women are the majority of the population in the world.
You don't know what words mean, do you?
Never underestimate a modern woman's ability to be able to use her feelings as incontrovertible proof to an argument that makes no sense.
A lot of the issues that I bring up on this channel are often met with responses like, it goes both ways. If it does go both ways, why do women dominate the mainstream media when talking about women's issues, while men's issues are forced to remain online?
Because first of all, the mainstream media is a business, and women buy more products and listen to more talk shows.
And that is exactly why the WNBA is the sheer bastion of profit that it is today. Am I right? And that is going to do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, share this video. Let's give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and until next time, peace out, homies.